loud. And share. All right. So welcome to our March Volunteer Leadership Development Series. We have been focusing on our 5-year plan for Hendricks County 4-H. This is something that we started a while back, but kind of got paused because of COVID. And so we're moving forward with this. And today we're going to be talking specifically about 4-H and the community. So before we get really going, I want to make sure I share the Indiana 4-H mission, which is to provide real-life educational opportunities that develop young people who will have a positive impact in their communities and on the world. Okay. A couple more joining in person or virtual. So I just think that's important to have in our mind as we go forward and have these discussions. Tonight, like I mentioned, our objectives are going to be, I'm going to just quickly review the 5-year plan for those of you that weren't able to join last time, or those that just need a refresher because it's the first time you're hearing about it. And then I'm going to just open up some discussion on specifically looking at volunteers, and that can be volunteer as club leader, volunteer as project leader, just a general 4-H volunteer, and specifically how they're going to relate to the topics of increasing awareness of the 4-H program, developing value of the 4-H program, advertising and marketing ideas, and then community partners. So community outreach, possible people to connect with in the community. And then we will have time for Q&A at the end as well. So first, an overview of our 5-year plan, looking at where we were, where we are, and where we're going. This 5-year plan, again, just a quick recap, started in 2019, fall of 2019, with a grand plan of by 2020 fair, we were going to have this wonderful plan ready to roll out. We had done a lot of research on different needs within the community, including the Hendricks County Community Foundation had done a needs assessment at that point. So we had participated in that. But then COVID hit, and like a lot of things, we had to hit pause on this. And so we're back at it. And our big question that we're trying to answer is, how do we make 4-H a relevant organization that is valued in a constantly changing society? And talking with my expansion and review committee, we still believe that this is a valuable question. We might have changed the way we look at the question now that we have experienced 2020. So there are 4 main topic areas, and that we want to include to address that. And I want to share, I have a beautiful little, here's a pretty, if you're a visual person, we've got our big question that we asked. And then we found over our research that there were 4 key objectives that we want to focus on. One being diversity, inclusion, and creating that welcoming environment. Equipping volunteers, which we talked about a little bit last month. Increasing awareness and developing value of the 4-H program. And community partners and outreach. And then our goal is to look at those 4 topic areas, and we wanted to take those 4 topic areas to our 4-H group. So Fair Board Council, leaders, junior leaders actually had this discussion at our meeting last week. And then even as an extension office, we want to participate and figure out how we can make this happen. So tonight we are going to focus on those last 2. And I really want this to be an open discussion of how you see reaching that big question. So we're going to specifically talk about 4 areas. Increasing awareness of the 4-H program, developing value of the 4-H program, advertising and marketing ideas, because sometimes those tie hand in hand, and then community partners and outreach. And the way we're going to do that, I do have a couple people here in person. Those of you online, you can unmute, or I'm going to collect all of our stuff via a Jamboard, which is like a giant Post-it note on Google. So this is something we used last month. And what you are able to do, I'm going to share a link in the chat box, and you guys can actually go on and I'll show you how to create Post-it notes. It should be anonymous, so I won't be able to see who's saying what. And then as we have discussion here and even online, we'll add Post-it notes as we see fit. So let me share this with you guys. And this is a fun tool to use for club meetings or project workshops if you're looking to gather some information from your 4-Hers, other people that you are talking with, and just share resources. So if you go to the chat box and click that, you should be able to come in here, and our first slide is our big question. So again, how do we make 4-H a relevant organization that is valued in a constantly changing society? And what I'll do is I have the 4 sort of topics that we're going to talk about listed. And those of you that are virtual, if you would like, you can go over here to the side and there's a little button that says sticky note. You can click that, type whatever you would like, test note. And when you save it, it'll pull up over here and you can move it around however you see fit. Again, you can unmute yourselves if you want to, if you prefer to talk. My goal is to collect all of the information here, excuse me, and then I'll be compiling everything into a little more organized thought process when it comes to volunteers and then what council is saying and what Fair Board's saying and our junior leaders as well. So feel free to do that as we start the discussion. If you have an idea pop into your head, I believe you that are virtual can also click through the slides and add sticky notes as we go. But I'll start off with the discussion of asking the question, when you think of the term increasing awareness of the 4-H program, what do you think of? Are there ways that we can do that? How could we do it? Are there options out there that we're missing? So. Not everybody at once.
Well, I have been thinking ahead, because I'm on the committee of the council, and I want to get that committee together to help plan ideas to promote voice.
Okay. So for the so those that couldn't hear, specifically creating a committee to promote 4-H during the fair, more than just having our projects out, more than just having animals here. So something that would actually engage people with what 4-H is. Is that correct? Okay. And pardon my spelling if I type too fast. Sometimes, you know, when people are watching, my brain works faster than my fingers type. So, so use an interest card to collect potential members' information. What else do we have? I should also add that if you're virtual and you want to type in the chat box, you can do that as well, and I can copy and paste over to a sticky note. Excuse me. So when I asked, and this kind of goes, this is why I had in here advertising and marketing. When I asked the junior leaders this question, a lot of them said reaching out to schools, which I agree with, but it is also really hard to do. So in thinking of that, I'm not saying we shouldn't outreach to schools, but what are other ways maybe we could engage schools that wouldn't necessarily involve us going in, since less and less schools are allowing people to come in to their classrooms. Promotional videos. Okay. we'll go on to the next one for right now. Again, if you guys have other ideas, we can always go back. But the second part of this topic area we found was the importance of developing the value of the 4-H program. Initially, our concern was numbers were seeming to kind of drop off, or at least remain steady, not really increase a whole lot. When everything hit in 2020, our participation went downhill a little bit, but I think that was to be expected because there was a lot of unknowns. So when we regrouped in the fall and started discussing, is this still our big question? Is this still what we want to try and answer? We said yes, but now we feel like we're combating not only trying to defeat the stereotype of, cows, sows, and plows are the only thing in 4-H, that we have a lot more to offer, but also how do we get kids involved that are zoomed out, or that, they don't want to just attend another virtual meeting. So when we think of developing the value of the program, how do we get those, especially like highlight those life skills that we offer that's unique about our 4-H program? What is it that you're seeing that we could do to really show parents, show people that would, youth, the importance of being a part of our 4-H program? These are either really tough questions or we're not awake today. It's cool.
Time when everything is so hard.
Right. That those that couldn't hear, she said that the time we're in just makes everything really hard. It just makes everything really difficult where we are. Right.
Almost have to pick outside the box and live it.
I think what people sitting at home are mostly engaged in is reach.
Oh. Okay, well now I get it. I have a program.
Like the chatters. Yeah.
The Avon we know that nobody hardly ever reads a newspaper anymore. Okay, the Avon Flyer
Sorry.
is probably very limited in its exposure. Whereas I'm looking at the current situation we're in, or home, what do they look at? What do they read? And this is not just for people, this is general
Right.
public.
Right.
And so that's one thing that comes to mind. And you got this marketplace thing.
Mhm.
People on that all over. So those kind of avenues we might really consider looking at 4-H advertising, and not just advertising. Oh, this is 4-H. Getting out.
Having a really hard time hearing.
Mhm.
area, but.
Right.
And because a lot of people don't know.
Right.
Probably don't know. But
Right.
people who don't care. They see fakes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right.
But that's where I think we can promote exposure. for it.
Yeah. So,
With the-
Right. no, so just to recap, maybe one of the advertising marketing ideas would be so specific social media campaigns, whether it's using the chatters or we did do some paid advertising this year on Facebook, and we saw an increase in our numbers on our page, which was good. The council had set aside some funds specifically towards social media. But I will say, I think it was very last minute on our end. So if that is something that we could work in strategically to a 5-year plan of how can we use social media to promote 4-H, I think that could be, it'd be a lot less stress on us, all at one time. We
Quick question, Katie.
Oh, we have an
you
idea
hear me,
of,
Katie?
I learned it in 4-H. So what did things I learned in 4-H.
Can you hear me, Katie?
Oh, so like something catchy, like that our 4-Hers could help us with too.
Ah, shoot.
Yeah.
Oh,
So connect with school boards or I like the 4-H emojis with head, heart, hands, etc. That's cute. I like that idea. We have a sticky note on our advertising marketing idea of gotta find the right social media. I agree, and that has been something we've talked about in our office, and then I want to say it was either early 2020 or 2019. We had the state marketing specialist join us, and like that was just when I think TikTok was taking off, and we discussed if 4-H should be on TikTok. Is that like that's because that's where the kids are. And at a state level, it's harder because there's not necessarily a face to go with the state 4-H program. Local might be, but it would be one of those like we have to upkeep it. And what do we do? Because I think people are starting to hopefully know at least who I am. So I could be a face, or our office could be a face to 4-H. But that is something we could definitely look into of other social media that it would be appropriate to reach kids and promote 4-H. Because Snapchat was another one that was brought up, and it's hard to figure out how to properly use Snapchat again when you don't have the face of an organization on a state level compared to a local level. And is that the best way to communicate messages? But I agree, figuring out the correct social media. And to your point of doing targeted campaigns, I think studies are showing, the average age on Facebook is going to be more the parent, grandparent age. So targeting that advertisement compared to if we would do something like on Instagram where some teens are more. So that might look a little different. They're not necessarily going to be a copy and paste. Same message, just said differently, possibly. So there was a question on the increase in numbers we saw on Facebook. Who were they, parents or students? Definitely parents. They were definitely parents. So going back, other ideas for developing the value of the 4-H program. How do we get our message out there of why it's important to be involved, and how do we show that importance? And again, I think this ties really hand in hand with marketing and advertising, but
I would like to see something similar to the ambassador program we used to have. Where we send
mhm.
or Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
And we could,
Optimist, yeah.
we could point out what good employees just made and
Chamber of Commerce's would be another one. So that actually leads us to our fourth little point that we'll talk about, is when we think about community partners and community outreach, are there organizations that we should do better at connecting with? Or are there people out there, are there groups of people even that we're just totally missing the ball on? Like, is there somewhere, in the middle between Plainfield and Coatesville that, there's a whole big group of students, but we have no 4-Hers there. So what can we do to reach out to them? Again, I don't know if that is true. I just made that one up. But who should we be reaching? Who should we be partnering with? And who would be those organizations that would help us reach those goals of showing why we're relevant and valuable? Challenge 4-H clubs to do more service-oriented projects, maybe offer tangible items for service like we do for projects. Ooh, that's a good. Would that be a develop value? Maybe. I like that idea. And I will say that this Jamboard, I'm going to send out this Jamboard along with the YouTube video of the recording of this. So if you guys have other ideas, we can put them on there. I'm going to give I still have to figure out my total time frame, but I'm hoping by May to have everything kind of solidified and be able to really focus down on it, from council, fair board, all the other things too. So you'll be able to add to this if you get off of this thing and you're like, oh man, this is a really good idea. But let's go back to community partners. So who in the community, Becky, you mentioned maybe, so optimist groups like Rotary, Kiwanis, are those kind of all, would they be similar, like, are there other groups that we, county commissioners? HRH, township trustees. Yeah. So like reaching out to the sponsors that maybe typically just focus on the fair, but seeing how else they would want to be involved. Um, Chambers of Commerce, that was the one I was thinking of. Thanks whoever put that on there.
You're welcome.
Children's programs that capture children in need, also some of the sporting complexes. Ooh, that is something that we have, to my knowledge, I don't think ever done, is reach out to sporting complexes. I will say one thing, and this is something, so again, we started having some of these conversations in our office. I would like to have a strong network of like libraries, like contacts in libraries, contacts in schools. It seems like everybody, every school has a shift in who does what every so often, so we have to constantly update those, but I feel like that's something our office could do better at. If we have a program, having a more consistent way of getting the message out. So besides just social media, sharing it with the library, sharing it with the schools, making sure we're more consistent with who we're sending our message out to. This is 4-H program at the libraries. All right, other people we see we should be reaching out to, groups that we're missing. And I'll also throw in there, so this is, I again posed this question to the junior leaders and they kind of took it a different way. They started looking at who we could maybe do some community service projects with. And that brought up a discussion of, would that be beneficial even for clubs? And I think we talked about this maybe a little last time, of being able to provide a list of contacts at organizations throughout the community. If you want to do a service project, for example, Becky, I know you guys go to the county home. Is that a contact that we could have, that if other people want to do that, or if there's someone specifically that we could work with at Sheltering Wings, because we've done programs, but who's their contact person if another club would want to do something for them? Or are there ways that, again, just like getting, I guess, a resource list available for leaders to have, would that be something that would be helpful, we think? And I guess not just club leaders. Kenny, if photography wanted to say, you know what, we're gonna do a community service project for those that need jobs and they need headshots. I don't know. How could we help make that happen? Mhm. So that actually brings up a really good point, Becky. Having a better way for leaders, volunteers, 4-Hers to share their stories as they're happening, instead of, or like more consistent. So is that, if you email us by the next morning, we're going to get that up on social media. If the 4-H Explorers have done something really awesome, how can we get that message out and say like, hey, look what they're doing? Or if this group over here is doing something, if our electric project is working on something, how do we make sure we're getting that advertised on our social media in a timely manner so people are seeing it happen? That's a good question. Okay. Make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. So I know this is not a, traditional volunteer training, but I appreciate the feedback you guys are giving. And I think this is really important, because my goal with all of this is to also be able to provide some insight. Obviously, I think 2020 shows that we don't know, we never know what's going to happen the next day. But if we can provide some strategic ways of how we can grow our program, and we're going to, you know, aim to do this as a team instead of every year, you know, I'm coming in and saying, well, these are my goals and this is what I'm going to do. If we can strategically as a program move forward, I'm hoping that it will help. And not that it might derail a little bit or change a little bit, but having something I think is going to be hopefully better than where we are currently, which is not a bad place, but could always be better. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through here. Excuse me, and if there's anything else before we really get going, because again, this was the, oh, look, and there's stuff up here. Perfect. So have weekly updates to parents. Oh, for schools. Get mentioned in the weekly updates. And I think homeschool, there's a homeschool group gonna have a newsletter as well. Let me add that. So I'm gonna add that here. So. Community parades, newspaper coverage, and local papers is still relevant. And we are lucky. I will say, I feel like we are very lucky that Betty at the Republican does a great job of making sure 4-H is well represented. I don't know if you guys saw a couple weeks ago, but when we started the flower sales, it was like front page news. So it was either a really slow news day or they're just super supportive. And I like to think that they're super supportive of our program. And parents need education that is more than for farm kids, events outside of fair time for community. Hendricks County icons. So yes, they have also recently bumped up their interest in our program, which is great. It's a little harder to get into, but they have recently, so they did a story about our wonderful donor who was able to pay program fees. And I don't know if you guys saw that, but our president for junior leaders, Ellie Henry, was on the cover. I think she made the front cover actually of the icon. So that was really cool. Some great footage, but I think it goes back to that education of we're doing stuff now year round. And I think they're just starting to catch on to that as well, that it's not just during the fair type thing. But I am going to put that on community outreach.
I tried to move on the ramp for individual ones today.
All right, anything last minute for increased awareness of the 4-H program? And again, this is going to be available, so if you want to go back and if you need time to think about it.
How about taking some of our classes?
And I think we talked about that a little bit last time, so they tie in really well, but utilizing our workshops, so working smarter, not harder, being able to share electronically our workshops on YouTube and stuff.
With the library. Do it so that we use it.
You can have your categories in there.
Mhm.
Or astronomy,
Right.
you have different categories.
Yep. So develop value of the 4-H program. Any last minute thoughts on that? I added your YouTube thing. We had encouraged the social aspect. I agree. I assume kids would still get credit for a recorded workshop they watch. So they'd have to be able to prove they watched it, but yes. All right. Advertising and marketing, any last minute thoughts on that? Again, I know this was very different. And then our community partners. You guys got some good ones that I had not thought of yet, so thank you. Okay. Well, cool. So to recap, our next upcoming events are going to be April 26th and May 13th. April 26th, we're going to be focusing on the diversity, inclusion, and creating a welcoming environment. And I'm trying to actually have a guest speaker here for part of the time, possibly just virtually. But I'm hoping they can maybe help facilitate some ideas and discussion related to that topic area. As we start to think of, as volunteers, how can we create that welcoming environment that welcomes kids, parents, new families into our program, as well as celebrates diversity and the inclusion we would like to have within the 4-H program. And then May 13th at 6 p.m. We also do have one in June as well. I just apparently didn't put it on there. And I will just leave the last couple minutes for questions if anybody has anything. If not, we will wrap up. Questions? All right. If not, thank you guys so much for joining in person and virtual. I really appreciate it. Again, I will be this is recorded, so I will upload it to YouTube, get that link out, as well as the Jamboard link to all of the volunteers. So if other people have ideas, they can add that as well. So thank you guys so much, and everybody have a great night.